collecting the stories of our lives, tips for writing our family histories. Wow, tips for writing our family stories. Why do we care? I'm going to go through just a couple of things that I think should give us great cause for pause, right? Here's why we should care. As they say in the biz world for many, many, many decades, what a corporation's doing an annual meeting or they're rolling out a good new plan, they always say, we do big, important work. Well, you and I, as family historians, as genealogists, we do big, important work. It's the stories of our families that weave the fabric of our communities, and we can't know our history without knowing our families' histories, our families' stories. And just 2 points of emphasis on top of that, educators, sociologists, psychologists have been studying both ends of the life continuum, if you will. They're telling us now through their research, this isn't just stuff they're musing about or dreaming up, through their research, they tell us that children who know more of their family's stories succeed in almost everything in life, succeed in school, succeed in business, succeed in being leaders, succeed in dealing with change and diversity at every aspect of their lives. I read a study not too long ago. They studied a group of fourth grade students over the course of a number of years. And they found out that these students, if they just know their grandparents' names, just those four things, not their birth dates, not their marriage dates, not what they did, not their death dates, just their names, just the names of their four great grandparents, they excel in almost everything, making friends, academically, sociologically, socially. They are leaders. They are the inventors. They are the ones that find solutions. They problem solve better. Oh my goodness, we do big, important work, right? And then on the other end of the life spectrum, through work that Vivid Picks is doing with the National Institute for Dementia Studies, they're finding out that those family members of ours who are on the dementia spectrum, they have better recall. The regression of their memory slows. They're more compliant with their family members and healthcare workers if they have photographs of family members and family happenings and people that can talk with them about those photographs. Who's in the photograph? What's going on there? Is it a family reunion? Is it a holiday gathering? Oh my goodness, we do big, important work. Our stories impact our families' lives. How can we not do this? Second point that I hope makes an impression on you, how many times I have heard this and my colleagues have heard it, and I'm guessing many of you have heard it, that no one in my family wants my stuff. No one in my family wants my three-ring notebooks, my shelves and shelves of records and documents. And on a bright sunny Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to argue that that's our fault. That's our responsibility. No one wants our stuff because we haven't written up the research. We haven't created stories out of all the documents and records and interviews that we have gathered. We've just gathered stuff. So, is it a problem? Is it a sadness? Is it a lament that no one wants our stuff? Absolutely. And that's on us. And we can change that today by making a commitment to what I call write up our research, write up the photo album, write up the correspondence we have, write up our research. I offer that many of us, and I can't really see a show of hands unless you invoke the little raised hand, and I'm not asking you to, but I'm guessing that many of us are hunters and gatherers rather than researchers. And what's the distinction? The distinction is we spend our entire lives gathering material, copying, gathering, scanning. We spend our whole lives doing that, but we never take a moment to write that research, compile it, create the story out of the documents. And then what happens? What happens is when we pass on from this wonderful earth and our grandkids maybe sometimes our kids, likely our grandkids or great grandkids, are settling our estate. They walk into our studies, they look at our file cabinets, they open it up and they say, "What's all this old stuff? What do these papers mean? Who's in these papers?" They don't recognize the collateral lines. They don't recognize the names because we haven't written the stories. We haven't shown them. In many cases, we haven't even put a family group sheet or an ancestor chart in the front of every file so they can at least have some context. How does Curt know this? How do I know this? Because literally every week we get boxes, plural, sometimes pallets, plural, of family papers that we are the stop between the home and the landfill because no one in the family wants that stuff because they don't understand it. They don't know it's their story. No one has shared with them the story. No one has written the story. We've just gathered stuff. We need to change that. Our lifetime's worth of research is in peril if we don't make it relevant by writing up the stories. If we do write up the stories, we are preserving living memory because as we write things in our family documents, as we kind of record that history, pull that history from the documents, things will pop into our mind that we have talked with relatives about, that we have talked to distant family members about, things we have seen on research trips and family pilgrimages to various places around the country or world. We are, if we write up our research, we are preserving living memory. They say that every time a person dies, a library burns, a library is destroyed. And if you think about it, that's really kind of true, right? We have so much in our minds that we haven't written down. Who has access to our brains? Not too many other people besides us. So it's really important for our children and our grandchildren and the great grandchildren of our grandchildren, whom we will never meet. It's important for them to know our stories and have our living memory preserved. Finally, I'm going to offer to you that the genealogical proof standard again begs us, entices us, almost obligates, if I can use that scary word, obligates us to write. Because number 5 of the genealogical proof standard is the conclusion has been soundly reasoned and coherently written. Writing that down, writing it longhand, keying it down, speaking into a voice transcribing software, however you get it down, however you write it up, write it down. We're obligated to do that by the genealogical proof standard. So I hope you see that writing our family stories is really consequential. It's really the highest, best thing we can do with our research. So in beginning, let's just review some things that kind of is what you might call a mindset. Some of us find writing really painful. And I would hypothesize, and you'll see a couple slides in a moment, I would hypothesize that most of our early life experiences, writing was painful, right? In school, we had to write correctly. Remember those kindergarten lined papers where you had to write capital letters and small letters, and you'd get the dreaded red circle if your tail on the G was too long or too short, or the H didn't go up high enough. And you take that from kindergarten all the way up to undergraduate, graduate, where we're writing theses and dissertations, and people are commenting on this and commenting on that and telling us we didn't articulate clearly enough and didn't have enough footnotes. So much of what we associate with writing is negative. We need to change that. We need to kind of dispense with that negativity and really put some positive things in our minds about writing. One of those positive things is it's the best gift you can give to your children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. We kind of know this, kind of almost subconsciously, we know this, but Ancestry did a study almost a decade ago where they were looking at baby boomers. And they said most baby boomers are interested in leaving a legacy, not gold and silver, for their descendants. Well, what would that legacy be if not gold and silver? Well, it would be their stories, right? You hold the keys to so much of your family's history and family heritage. Doesn't it make you feel good when you can share that with family members? Writing can really be among the most interesting and exciting things you do as you look to record what you know in a way that's faithful, exciting, colorful, engaging for your children and grandchildren. You're sharing yourself with them. What could be more exciting than that? As I mentioned previously, when you write, you're saving living memory and you're putting the story into family history. And I would argue that family history without story is just a collection of stuff. And again, are we stuff gatherers or are we researchers, right? So it's really critical, really, really critical. Some tips, and this is where the tips part comes in. Don't feel like you're writing the next edition of War and Peace. Keep it simple. A lot of us have like a starting barrier, I call it. Well, I want to start at the beginning, and you'll see a bullet point on that in just a moment. Well, let's dispense with that beginning stuff. I want to make sure I have everything before I start writing. Or how much of my family should I write about? My direct lines, all my collateral lines, my tangential lines. Just keep it simple. Don't think you have to wrap your arms around everything. I know it's probably not the best analogy, particularly around lunchtime or just after lunch for some people. How do you eat an elephant? You don't eat the whole elephant. You eat an elephant bite at a time, as the old saying goes. That's how we write our family story. We oftentimes think, well, I just need to know a little bit more to start writing. I might forget something. Well, it's not going to be the end of the world if your writing is not totally comprehensive. But if you never start writing, you've just forgotten everything as far as passing it along. So you know more than you think you know. Just start. Just start. Oftentimes, less is more. The more complicated, the more complicated you make it, the harder it's going to be. Small is great. There's really nothing too small for you to write about. Since we need to, as we'll see in a slide or two, since we need to get into the habit of writing daily, write about the small things. Write about that reminds me of, or I heard a mourning dove this morning and I smelled the pumpkin pie in the oven and that reminded me of. Start with things like that. You don't even have to have a cohesively beginning to end essay, memoir, or even page of writing. You can even do stream of consciousness writing. There's really no right way. I'm serious. All our lives, we've told us about the right way to write, the correct spelling, the correct grammar. You need to write the King's English. No, no. Some would argue against that. I'm giving you my perspective. You really just need to start writing. Equate writing with something enjoyable. I know for us, because of our experiences, particularly in our education, writing can be kind of painful. You don't have to start at the beginning. I mentioned that already. Writing typically doesn't come easy, but desire and experience. So we really desire to leave something, to create our family story out of all the thousands and tens of thousands of documents we have gathered. So we have that desire. And then experience. The more we write, the more enjoyable you will find it. So write. You have to write every day. Seriously. You want to get your mind into thinking it's enjoyable by successfully engaging in a writing experience without a catastrophe happening. 2 sentences, like 90 seconds before you watch the evening news or after dinner or before you turn in for the night. Just 2 sentences. And pretty soon, I'm going to venture a guess that for most of you, the 2 sentences will turn into 4 because you have a thought that needs 3 or 4 or 5 sentences to really complete. But you must write every day. This is so key. A tip for us to begin writing. Your unique thoughts, your unique words. I know all our lives, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, we've been told the proper way to write, the proper grammar. You can't use double negatives. You really shouldn't use y'all or all y'all or themins or no. Your unique thoughts, your unique words. It doesn't have to be a published PhD level dissertation. Arguably, it shouldn't be. your unique thoughts, your unique words. It's easier for you to get into the habit of doing that, of actually engaging in writing. Don't feel compelled, as I mentioned a few seconds ago. Don't feel compelled to start at the beginning. Um, the beginning is wherever you want to start. Some tips, additional tips for success: read constantly, write daily. And you might say, "Oh, wait a minute, Curt. We're talking about tips for writing, and you're telling me to read daily?" Absolutely. Read constantly. Why am I saying that? Reading will, one, at least in our subconscious mind and likely in our conscious mind, give us ideas about words, the meaning of words, the construction of phrases. What things have you read that evoke memories, that evoke emotions from you? And maybe you want to borrow those kinds of words or sentence structure because it feels comfortable to you. And when you read, it helps trigger, it helps kind of ignite your living memory. When you read something, it could remind you of, and then a previous experience you had, a previous experience your family had. So reading constantly, really important. And you'll find a lot of writers say this, many writers, news reporters, correspondents, writers, authors, novelists. They say, I read all the time. It helps me write. Write where you're comfortable. If you are doing a lot of writing as far as emails and business plans and reports all day long, you might not want to stay at the same desk, the same computer, the same environment as if you're doing family history writing or writing your story. You want to be comfortable. You want something that evokes pleasant thoughts. You don't want your mind and your body, your physique, if you will, to be all tensed up with stress. You want it to be easy and flowing. Some people have even experimented with writing instruments that have their own meaning. Maybe a parent or grandparent has passed down their favorite pen or the pen they had with them on their mission or the pen they had with them when they were deployed in the military, or a pen that looks like the pen that your grandma used to use when she was writing. Anything that puts some enjoyment, some soothing enjoyment to your writing endeavors. Um, Also, experiment with digital recorders and smart devices, to capture your thoughts and ideas that come to you unexpectedly. Then you can play them back and write about them. Oftentimes, things will come to us when it's not convenient to write, maybe in the car, or maybe walking somewhere. A lot of people like to take walks. It's healthy, it clears your mind, raises your spirits. To take walks during the day, mid morning, mid afternoon, lunch break, evening break. Capture those thoughts that come to you unexpectedly, and then use that as a writing prompt later. Experiment with time of day that you write, with writing places, as I mentioned, with writing or keying. Some people really don't like manually writing. That's okay. Get out your iPad, get out your smart device, text yourself, um, download some apps that can be really beneficial for you. Pick some places that have the right lighting and the right instrument. That will make writing more enjoyable. Also, engage your senses when you want to write. Your senses, as in what you see on your screen: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. Why is smell underlined? Smell is underlined because your olfactory nerve is our body's most significant memory trigger. Advantage that. Use that. Maybe you put on a cup of coffee. Maybe you write after dinner. Maybe you write with a particular candle scent or smell. Smells do evoke many, many, many memories. Again, it's a human's strongest memory trigger. Use it, leverage it. Maybe write with the windows open and sounds remind you of things. Maybe actually, looking at the flag, the trifold military flag of a grandparent or a parent's military burial. Maybe the taste of food reminds you of things. Use your senses. And then experiment with formats. These are included in your handout. I won't cover all of them in much detail, but you don't have to write a particular way. My favorite is the last bullet point there, random streaming. I'll write about things near and far, things in my life and my great grandparents' lives. Some people love to write, like go through their recipe box and they love to write about where they got the recipes from. One of my colleagues does an excellent presentation on how we can use recipes and heritage cooking to find stories and capture, create, write stories of our family members. Do whatever works. My father-in-law, he and his surviving seven siblings wrote a progressive letter at the end of his life, and it's kind of cool. So this is how the letter starts out. He starts out talking about an event he remembers when he was 3 in 1916. Oh my goodness! Don't you love the place they left? Wild Dog Creek, Kentucky. And he's talking about walking, having to walk from there to Farmers Ridge. And if you go down the letter real quickly, as we don't have much time, you'll see that his younger brother was being carried, but he had to walk. So he was holding Daddy's hand, fourth line up. Daddy held my hand and led me across. It was very scary because he was looking down the trestle bridge to raging or running water underneath. That immediately evoked a memory from my childhood that I wrote about. I walked across the bridge from the parking lot to my father's Western Union office in Saginaw, Michigan, and we crossed a river. And I remember always being scared because what if this bridge gave way? Because you were walking on steel grating and you could see the water underneath. So all these kind of things, not only can we do those in writing our story, but we can read other people's progressive letters or correspondence and create our own stories, create writing prompts. A real good friend of mine and an excellent genealogist, Paul Milner, has for many years, as you can see, shared a family letter that he sends to family and friends every holiday, he and his wife, Carol. And this is from many years ago. I've saved all of them. They're usually no more than 2 pages. This year in 2008, they wrote their Christmas holiday greeting letter around one word, ritual. Oh my goodness, what a rich letter. You're only seeing like a quarter of the first page where they're talking about a simple ritual. Carol's dad, Art, and Carol making him coffee in his stay with them and how his memory was beginning to degrade. But he was kind of honored and talked about in this wonderful, wonderful narrative. We've heard this saying forever, a picture's worth 1,000 words and more. You know why? Because oftentimes looking at a picture before we relegate those unidentified pictures to the heap of questionable things that our grandchildren will look at, we can write about them, not only just identify who's in them, but where was that picture taken? Why was the picture taken? Was it a graduation? Was it someone's funeral? Was it a family reunion? Was it just because I went to visit? Well, all kinds of reasons. A picture is worth 1,000 words or more. And so many of us have so many pictures, and they're typically unidentified because we're going to get around to it, except many of us don't because we don't write. Let's change that. Let's make a commitment to change that. Even unidentified photographs that we have handed to us from parents and grandparents, even those can be thought starters and discussion starters or writing prompts. Those 2 phrases, second and third bullet points you see, think of those as things we put in front of unidentified photographs. That reminds me of, that looks like, and then fill in the blank. So just a quick test. We don't have much time here, but what do you see? I can never look at these the same way after my young 4 boys were growing up and spent a lot of time going over to Grandpa's house because Grandpa was, I really do believe this, please don't be offended, but Grandpa to them was God on earth. He could do no wrong and he knew everything. And he was a wonderful, wonderful human being. So these gumdrops, I can never look at gumdrops again. And I wrote about this in my own writings. And just quickly, just before my kids would leave Grandma and Grandpa's house, Grandpa would wrap candy gumdrops in plastic wrap, put a few coins, pennies, nickels, dimes next to each bag of candy, and then double wrap the whole thing again. Each kid got one. They would come running into the house, or I would unstrap them from their car seats at the end of a Saturday at Grandpa's house, and their little hands would be clutching that precious package from Grandpa. I can still see their faces. I can smell the sweat on their young foreheads. I can see the delight in their eyes that, yes, once again, Grandpa gave them his little gift. We have stories like that in all of our lives. Write it up, whatever it is, the photo album, the collection of letters, our research papers, write it up. Write up the photo albums and photo boxes, the letters, your email. Are we saving all the family email we get? What about the stuff we post on Facebook and other social media? What happens to that? We need to be incorporating that into our writing. Write up about documents and jewelry and metals and pins. Write up your research and write up what I call stumble upons. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. We know about all these family documents. I'm not going to even spend a breath on them. We copy them, but we don't write them up. We don't say who's in them, why it's consequential, and what we can learn from those documents. Here's a stumble upon. I ran across this saying probably 15, 16, 17 years ago. How simple a thing it seems to me that to know ourselves as we are, we must know our mothers, plural, our mothers' names. And when I saw that, I started writing right away. Okay, how far back can I know with all of my mother's names? My mother's name, her mother, her mother, her mother, her mother, my father's mother, her mother, her mother, her mother, and those mothers. And it's kind of a fascinating way to test really how much you remember or know about your family. And then it's a writing prompt. What do you know about these people? What do I know about Tilly Englert? What do I know about Eleanor Shook? So how cool. Um, when I was teaching beginning genealogy as an adjunct course at the university, local university here, I would panic some of my students on the first day because I would say, 2 weeks from this first day, excuse me, I gave them a challenge that you have to pick one person in your family and write 1,000 words about them. Oh my gosh, 1,000 words. That was like saying, you're going to Leavenworth to do hard labor for the rest of your life. That's like all you need to do is calm your mind, gather a photo album, gather documents, gather thoughts, and 1,000 words. You can probably crank that out in less than 10 minutes. You have to start. You have to start. Share your story by doing something with all your documents, by identifying and transcribing your correspondence and your letters. Getting others to write their stories may help you write your stories. The writings of family members can enlighten, illuminate, and encourage us. And the last bullet point there, their musings may inform your writing. You may agree with their musings. Their musings may trigger maybe an adverse reaction, like, I don't remember it that way at all. I remember it this way. And before you know it, in 5 minutes, you've written 2, 3, 4, 500 words about a piece of your family. That's what it's really all about. Sharing your story, creating occasions for people to gather and talk by what I call reverencing the wisdom keepers, reverencing the older members of our family and the genealogists in our family by asking them questions, asking them to share some of their stories so you can include those in your writing. Start family traditions of, ethnic, family, generational activities, and write about them. It's amazing what you're going to be able to find. If you can't preserve your story, you can't do it if you don't have the story. I'm going to preserve all of my papers. Well, I can tell you assuredly that for more than half of you on this call, if you don't write up your research, if you don't write your story, and you just have a collection, 7, 8, 9 file cabinets full of papers, about half of you, or maybe a little more, upon your death in less than 5 years, those will be in a landfill because no one will know their significance, their consequence. You can't keep putting off opportunities to write. We don't know when our time to move on is. It's just that consequential. And there really are so many resources to assist you. I put many of those resources in your handout. As you probably noticed by now, the handout doesn't march straight through my presentation. The handout gives you a lot of tips and ideas. It's supposed to be evergreen apart from this presentation. I'm a few minutes over, so I'll end here. Preserving your story helps preserve our history. It's really that important. I'm going to stop the screen share. I am going to go in and post into the chat one more time where you can find the handout. If you don't know Don't have a chat, just send an email to genealogy@acpl.info. I will turn my camera back on here. And I'm going to look quickly into the Q&A. It looks like there are 3 questions in there. We'll see if we can handle those quickly. Well, one's not a question, which is fine. I missed several of these Family History Month presentations. Is there a way I can go back and review them? Absolutely. Absolutely. Go to genealogycenter.org, look on our YouTube channel. There are more than 270 presentations. It takes us a moment or two, like several days, to get presentations rendered properly and on our YouTube channel. So look, probably mid-November to have all the Family History Month presentations that have been recorded, and most have been recorded. There's a nice hello from Cushing, Oklahoma. Yay! Thank you for being here today. How honest should we be about ancestors and their life events? I know this is going to frustrate you. Sorry, Myron, for being frustrating. How honest should you be? The answer is yes. As honest as you believe you can be, and as honest as you can be respectfully. Our goal is not to embarrass anyone. Our goal isn't to out a family secret. And maybe we have a couple of sets of writings for us and a select few of our family members, and writings to be more generally shared. I know that concept is not widely embraced. If you have to err on one side or another, I always encourage people the truth, the complete truth, no commentary, no emotion, just the truth. One of my colleagues has a great saying, and it's true. If we think about it, how many normal, quote, normal families have we run into? Many of us believe there's no such thing as a normal family, whatever that means. So most families can embrace a lot, more so than we might think. So don't write to embarrass anyone, but the truth is always good. When you talk about how to use, when did you talk about how to use modern methods? Pam, I don't think I quite understand that question. Cynthia asked, can I use the video and handout to show to and inspire our genealogy society? Absolutely. And Luana asked, do you do other virtual presentations? Yes, my entire team does, and we'd be happy to engage you on this subject or other subjects. So I think our time is really up. 3 minutes over. I want to thank you so much for joining me and joining de facto the Genealogy Center on this second Wednesday of Family History Month. Please take every opportunity to spend a moment and then maybe several moments writing, and spend an opportunity during Family History Month to do one more thing that you haven't done before. Learn one more thing. You'll be better for it. You'll do better research. And we all will hope and aspire to write up that research to leave it for our grandchildren and their grandchildren. Best wishes for continued success in your Family History Month endeavors. And we look to see you tomorrow night on our Thursday evening program, or whenever it's convenient for you to join us. Thanks again, and have a good day.